What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Nuts and Bolts Sports. I'm Raj. Joining me, as always, Jordan right here. We're here to talk to you guys about the return of the NBA in the bubble. Playoffs are in full swing now. A few games here into round one for most of these teams, a lot of these matchups. But before we get into that, let's go ahead and discuss the draft lottery because we had that last night. That's what we're going to kind of open up with. 2020 NBA draft lottery, number one pick going to Minnesota, followed up number two by Golden State Warriors, which is still kind of insane to me. Number three, Charlotte Hornets. Number four, Chicago Bulls. Number five, Cleveland Cavaliers. Woo! Number six, Atlanta Hawks. Number seven, Detroit. Eight, New York. They fell to 8. They fell 2 whole spots. Kind of ridiculous. 9, Wizards. 10, Phoenix. 11, San Antonio. 12, Sacramento. 13, New Orleans. And then 14, Boston from Memphis. I believe that was like the trade that involved Jeff Green from like 5 years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was one of those just kept rolling over.
Yeah, when Danny Ainge just picking up draft picks left and right. Anything to say here? I know I don't really watch college basketball that much, so I'm not too familiar with the prospects. So I'm going to let you kind of handle that side of it.
Yeah, definitely an interesting. I mean, obviously the whole feel of it was different. It was all virtual, so it was a lot of cutting to Mark Tatum and then cutting to the representative for each teams, which were kind of like, we don't know what to do on camera, so they kind of just stood there stale.
Who was it? Was it Rui Hachimura that just started like awkwardly laughing when it got to him for the Wizards?
So. Yeah, because you had some of the players, like, you know how it works. They send either like a GM, president, or like a player. D'Angelo Russell turned out to be the good luck charm for Minnesota. It'll be interesting to see who they take there. They're probably going to have to go after, Anthony Edwards or LaMelo, just based on their needs. And then, Golden State. What a perfect time to rebuild for them. They have all this bubble crap, all this time for Curry and Clay to get healthy, and then they still get the number 2 pick. It'll be interesting to see, like, do they take James Wiseman or whoever is left after 1, or do they look to package that pick with Andrew Wiggins and get somebody a little more polished? Because you think about it, you kind of have the second half of the window here for Curry, Clay, Draymond, Steve Kerr, all, this whole Warriors dynasty. You never know how many years you're going to have left with it, especially with all the injuries they've had. So it'll be interesting to see if they, decide they want to develop somebody, or if they want to go for make like a win now trade. That'll be interesting to see. The Knicks, they were supposed to be top 3 or 4 again, and when they popped up at 8, my buddy and I just started laughing. We were just like, "This is classic Knicks." I will say this isn't like last year where, it was laughable to see them kind of get bumped to 3rd instead of 1st, where they were missing out on a Zion or a Ja. This year at 8, I don't feel like this draft class is very strong. Even the top 3 guys, with LaMelo, Anthony Edwards, Wiseman, whoever you have in your top 3 or 5, they all have pretty fatal flaws, at least right now. So the Knicks could almost be better off getting someone who they can just bring in as a role player, whether it's like Obi Toppin or Killian Hayes, like the guys that necessarily probably will never be like superstars, but could fill like a much better role than like the Knicks have done with their 4 power forwards and 2 centers and all that stuff. So it'll be interesting to see. Plus, you never know, draft day trades. We'll see, what happens there. But definitely an interesting experience, for sure.
Yeah, that's why I think what you're saying, because I've heard the same thing about this draft class being not even really top heavy at this point, just kind of being weak in general, and for Cleveland to fall down to 5, they probably would have ended up 4 or 3 if they probably wouldn't have gotten 1 or 2 either way. But for them to fall down to 5 2 years in a row now is pretty disappointing. I like the pick of Darius Garland last season. I think he was solid. He was really good in the preseason and summer league and whatnot, but he didn't quite show those same sort of numbers in the regular season. But I'm sure that with experience, he will develop into a pretty solid player. But like I said, I don't really pay that close attention to college basketball, so I'm not really sure who Cleveland's going to go after. I have no sort of expectations. On the Warriors front, do you expect them to trade it, or do you expect them to keep it?
It's tough because like they have the culture and like proven coaching staff that they could bring anybody in and develop them quicker than I think a lot of teams, like Minnesota, Charlotte, like all the teams that are around them, I think would struggle much more bringing somebody in. So if they brought in like a James Wiseman, who's probably like, you think about it, if they decide to not trade it and they keep Wiggins and Draymond, and they have Curry and Clay in the backcourt, they really only need a center. So Wiseman would be the guy. But
That's exactly what I was thinking. Yeah.
You know, he would be the guy because of his upside, him being so big, you know, a very good athlete. We only saw him play a couple games at Memphis because of the suspension there, but definitely, you know, some upside with him, more so down low than with, you know, obviously everyone else pretty much guards at the beginning of the draft. But at the same time, I feel like Bob Myers and those guys are smart enough to know that they probably only have like 3 to 5 years left of like truly like could be a force every year, contend for a title. So I think they'll poke around and they'll see what's around. You know, it all depends on who's selling after this whole, you know, random weird season ends. You know, could it be Philly looking to unload one of their stars? Could it be, I'm trying to think, there's some other teams.
But that's the thing. Is anybody going to be looking to unload a star, even for a top 3 pick in a draft class that's not all that stellar?
Right, and that's the tough part. Like, this was last year, and they got 3. I think people would be chomping at the bit, and they'd be able to really turn it, you know, back for good profit. But we'll see. You know, you never know. If does Utah maybe decide that they're done with Rudy Gobert and
after today, I don't know about that.
Yeah, he might have played his way on there, but you never know what happens in the offseason. You know, we have still a lot of playoff games to be played, so we'll see who has, you know how it goes. Early exits, teams start to panic, and they might look to switch gears. So we'll see. We know one thing we know for sure is that the Warriors have a very very smart, very sophisticated staff from from the players all the way up to management and the owners. So whatever they do is probably going to be a good move. I'd bet on them making the right decision.
Yeah. We got in the comments of the main account here saying Jordan looks to be in a much better mood. Let's talk about why here. Lakers, not the Wizards, definitely not the Wizards. The Lakers picking up the comeback victory, pretty dominant victory here over Portland last night. A lot of what we discussed last time in terms of problems is kind of what fixed and what really helped things click for that team. I mean, Anthony Davis was obviously dominant. I went off on Anthony Davis last week, and I'm glad that he proved me wrong here, because he did a lot of his worked inside out, wasn't looking for the outside shots early on, was attacking the basket, aggressive inside, more on the offensive end. I think he could have done a little bit more defensively, but he was really, really good on offense. And then after he sort of got in his rhythm close to the basket, he stretched out and started hitting the threes late, and the turnaround jumpers and whatnot, and looked really, really good. But, you know, at least from what I saw on the court, it continued to be sort of the flowing through LeBron. LeBron was doing that post work, dishing out to the shooters, like I said last time, and this time the difference was that KCP was hitting shots, Danny Green hit some shots, Kuz was hitting shots. They played well. They played really well all around on the offensive and the defensive end, and I think that the panic last time was unwarranted. Like I said, I understand the frustration, but when you know the way that LeBron teams play, a game 1 loss is nothing to get worried about, and they proved that yesterday. And I guess we can also talk a little bit about Dame having the dislocated finger. He's not going to sit, I don't think, from all signs that are pointing to him playing in game 3. It is on his non-shooting hand, so that shouldn't be an issue, but you know, it is there, it is floating. So what are your thoughts? Are you feeling better?
Well, if you would have told me, you know, before last night's game that LeBron would go 4 of 11 from the field with 10 points and 6 turnovers, I would have been like, oh, so they're down 2-0, and I would have been pretty frustrated. I guess we'll start with the positives, kind of piggybacking off you there. Anthony Davis was much better, especially on offense. Just look to, you know, and that's how it should be for him. He should look to get inside early, get easy points around the rim, and then once he establishes that threat of going inside, then he can open up and he has even more space for his jumper, which comes and goes. But last night it was on, which only helped things. Like you said, the Lakers fans have this kind of like Philly and Laker fans are similar in the fact that they can absolutely shame somebody into either playing poorly or leaving. And that's what they did last night. They absolutely shamed Caldwell Pope into playing better. 5-8 from the field, 4-6 from 3, plus 24 in only 22 minutes. So that was huge. Even Kuzma didn't have a great game offensively, but it was at least moving within the flow of the offense. J.R. Smith hit some shots off the bench, which was also an interesting wrinkle. Vogel mentioned he was going to kind of extend the amount of guys that were playing, and he brought J.R. in as the first kind of new player to this series, and then Deion Waiters a little bit later. But everything just looked crisper. The ball movement, they seemed like their spacing was figured out more from those LeBron post-ups that you were mentioning in the mid to high post. It seemed like they figured out where they needed to be because of where Portland was going to rotate. So they did a good job of that. They did pretty well on the glass as well. I'm trying to think. Oh yeah, 28 assists, which I believe was the most of any team yesterday, which is something I wanted to highlight. That's going to win you ball games. You get the ball moving. You get an already pretty average to poor defensive team in Portland scrambling for coverage. It's usually going to end up in your favor. But just kind of like how losing highlights certain fatal flaws, I think winning covers up a lot of things as well, because you just focus on they cruised and LeBron and AD got to sit for most of the fourth quarter. They still need to hit more shots, for all the praise that we just gave them. 14-38, it's good. It could be better. I'd like it to be a little more efficient, not necessarily taking more shots, but just hitting more ones. There are a lot of clanks. There's a lot of wide open clanks that they need to fix. If it's contested,
it's those wing guys. It's those wing guys. I mean, they were better. They were definitely better last night. And that was the difference, honestly, between game 1 and game 2 is like in game 1, they just hit absolutely nothing. And in game 2, they were okay. They weren't good. They were okay. But that was enough. That was enough because there was only a 7-point loss in game 1. It was enough to get them over the hump. That paired with their better defensive play is what really got them the win there.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely. I mean, it's just one of the things you want to continue to shoot the ball well, keep improving. If they hit 14 3-pointers this game, their goal should be 15 for the next game, and so on and so forth. Defensively, I think they did better. They were a little bit better at pressuring Dame and CJ. And you could put it in for, them having a little bit of an off night, especially when CJ's finger, got dislocated, which was nasty looking. It was like 7 at one point. So they kind of caught a break there that there was no even threat of a comeback because Portland's obviously not going to risk him coming back in with that big of a lead. But defensively, they still were a little undisciplined. I still see a lot of jumping for pump fakes, and I don't understand that. It's coming from like Anthony Davis, and even LeBron. Like the Melo had the one on him where he literally backed him in, and I yelled, I said pump fake because Melo knows that LeBron's going to try and really D him up as his buddy. Sure enough, he pump fake, drew the foul. But it happened to AD a couple of times, which I think he's been really undisciplined in these first 2 games and needs to really show that he's a defensive player of the year candidate. I haven't seen that from him in the first 2 games, so, although he did have a nice block on Dame. But it seems like when their guards get into the lane, they're finishing amongst the trees of all the Lakers big men. Not even we're not getting a piece. I'll take a goaltend. Like at least knock it away. Don't let them see the ball go through the hoop because that those guys they thrive on that. And kind of coping with the big men there. Dwight Howard's killing me right now. He's letting Whiteside and these guys get in his head.
There's these ugly frustration fouls, and it's just like he's not really playing defense. He's not moving his feet at all. He's just kind of putting his arms out and smacking down and hoping that he'll get the block. And when he doesn't get the block and he gets called for a foul, then he gets upset with the ref. Then he gets more frustrated, and it just snowballs from there. And it's ugly. He looks really, really bad out there.
It's bad, and I'm worried that it's going to be he's going to be unplayable in a close fourth quarter game when they could potentially use an athletic body like him because he's just he's too big of a risk. He could get a technical, he could get ejected, he could flagrant foul. Like there's so many negative options that could come from him, and it's really frustrating because he had some really good stretches throughout the year, and I am probably one of the captains, if not the captain, of the Can't Stand Dwight Howard fan club for going back almost a decade now. But I was, he earned the playing minutes that he got this year, did pretty well, and just being the energy, rim running, rebounding guy. But it seems like he's faded here in the bubble. And like even last night, like I said, I thought he was going to get ejected at one point because he kept arguing and trash talking with Whiteside. And I was like, you're up 15, you're up 20. Why give Portland anything at all? Like just let him talk to you, let him get ejected. You just keep playing your game. But it seems like he refuses to. And then the other big thing is just Danny Green. I don't know what happened in the 3 months that they didn't play. Maybe he was one of those guys that didn't have a basketball court because he just looks not confident. Like even the shots he's taking, there seems like there's some hesitation. He's getting good looks. LeBron is generating him a ton of good looks in the first 2 games. And it's weird because I would expect it from some of the other guys. Kuzma first time, Caruso first time in the playoffs. Like I would expect those guys. We're looking at a guy who has the finals record for most threes in a series. I mean, this is a guy who can consistently knock down shots in any high pressure situation, and he hasn't done it. I still hold out like that, 35% hope that he can get it together. But I'm not confident with what I've seen right now. And I hope he just is just shooting at practice. Like just do nothing but stand there and shoot threes all practice because they would need, him. They don't need him to be like a 15 to 20 point scorer. But if you can routinely get them 10 to 14 points probably a night and hit the big threes when it matters most, that's what's going to do it and push them over the edge. Maybe not in this series if they're able to hold on and win, but if in a series against Houston or Oklahoma City and in a series against potentially the Clippers and the Mavs, that's when they're really going to need him. So we'll see. He's got some time, but it's the clock's ticking.
He looks a little out of sorts on defense too, which is really weird because he's always been such a good two-way player. So that's also a bit concerning, and I think it is just sort of a confidence thing. He's in his own head,
Yeah.
both on the offensive end. It's obvious because he isn't making those shots that, like you said, LeBron's getting him really good looks, and he's just not making them. And those are shots that, like, on any other team in the past that he had won championships with, he would have probably been shooting 80 to 90% even from 3-point line. As good of looks as those are. So that's kind of my thing, and then. He's, like I said, he's getting into his head, and it's probably frustrating him on the defensive end as well. And he just looks sort of lost. And that is something that I don't expect of Danny Green because he's always been such a calm, cool, and collected guy. He's never seemed like the kind of person that did get in his own head. And I understand that that's a shooter's thing. You do kind of doubt yourself often when you're missing shots. But he needs to.
You've been around as long as he have, though. I feel like you should have that. Little tricks to get yourself out of it, but I mean, we'll see. Former Cavalier great, by the way.
Yeah. On that championship team that LeBron took against the Spurs in 2007.
Yeah.
The good days, the good old days. But yeah, I don't have too much more to add. I think we kind of covered everything from the Lakers game. Do you have anything else you wanted to mention?
No, I mean, tomorrow's going to be a big game. We're going to see. 1-1 is essentially a restart. So. There's no, this is why I'm not like terribly upset that they're in the bubble, with LeBron's whole there's no fans. Guess what? If they would have split in LA, they would have had to go to Portland. And like we talked about on Wednesday, they struggle in Portland, as a lot of teams do, but the Lakers really struggle on the road in Portland over the years, both in the regular season and the playoffs. So here, you're just playing in the same spot. You have plenty of rest, no flight time, no nothing. Like you're staying. And I know everybody's starting to get antsy in the bubble, and I understand that. But, they're in a good spot. They just got to come out with the same energy. That's really the big thing. If you come out with the focus and the energy on both ends of the floor, whether the shots fall or not right away, at least you're going to set yourself up for success later in the game. So we'll see what happens, and we'll see how Dame responds. I'm sure he's going to be pretty ticked. So I expect a big Dame game as well.
Yeah, I think it'll be really good. Game 3 is going to be really exciting. I'm also in the comments. I see any word on Rondo. I know he was upgraded to questionable for the game, so he looks like he's going to be making his way back soon. But you don't want him. At least, what about the defense? At least the defense. He's going to do better than anybody else is on defense.
How much practice time has he got? That's my thing. Is like, has he been playing because he just got to the bubble in quarantine, so it's like, has he had any real experience? Vogel says that he hasn't played because he's got to get his legs under him, and obviously a guy like Rondo's been around the league for a while, so he probably doesn't need as much practice time. But I also don't need another guy out there going like 1 for 6. Like if Portland's smart, if he plays, they'll just leave him. I would leave him. I would play him like Lakers played him back when he was in Boston, just 6, 7, 8 feet off. And if he starts making shots, that's fine. I'd rather him take the shots than LeBron or AD. Also, good to see LeBron's his head. He's sharp right now. Yeah. They tried to give Portland the ball last night, and I fell for it. I was sitting there. I was like, all right, Portland's taking the ball.
It's our ball.
Probably the greatest video of all time from Barstool with their caption about the beer pong. Oh, that's like fantastic.
That's one of the few videos that, like, every time you watch it, it gets funnier and funnier.
I kept watching it.
Yeah, same. I had it on. They aired it a couple times yesterday on the broadcast too. It's so good. It gets so good, and every time on Twitter today I was scrolling and it popped up, I stopped.
Always.
But let's get into the other LA game that happened a couple nights ago. Dallas taking the 127-114 win over the Clippers. We kind of expected that. We talked about it. I know we didn't necessarily agree that there was going to be a win, but we expected a pretty close game and for Dallas to put up a real fight and for Rick Carlisle to exploit what LA was giving him, and that's exactly what happened because, again, Luka was obviously going to be as good as he was, but Kristaps was incredible, and actually off the bench, Seth Curry and Trey Burke showing up again. I mean, those guys have had some really good games here in the bubble throughout this 8 to 10 game stretch that they've played. I know Trey Burke in the first couple games especially was really, really good for Dallas, and Seth Curry's been pretty good this season overall. I think he has the best 3-point percentage in this. He did at least at one point.
He's the better shooting Curry brother, I think.
You think so? In the bubble, at least, yeah, sure. But yeah, I think that Dallas looked really good, and I'm actually, I'm thinking that they have enough to take this series. I think the thing that will get the best of them is maybe the inexperience, but when it comes to play, they have the matchup advantage. And because I think Beverly's out again tonight, so if they don't have anybody that can contain Luka, that's a problem. That's a problem.
It's a huge problem.
When Luka is playing as well as he is, it's similar to LeBron. He's not just a good scorer; he's an incredible playmaker. And when he's finishing and attacking the basket the way that he is, and he can find those guys outside, hit the open shot, the players that can actually hit the open shots on the Dallas Mavericks, other than that are not on the Lakers right now. I don't want to get too extreme here and say that the Clippers are done, but I'm a bit concerned for them mostly because of the matchup problems that they have right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely like this isn't something maybe with Portland and the Lakers where maybe everyone kind of overreacted a little too much, myself included. I think the concern is legitimately warranted here, and not for the lack of the Clippers maybe not playing well, but just for how good Dallas can be at their peak when they're flowing. Like I said, you have Luka, he demands attention from everybody on the floor at all times, and if he gets past his defender, it's pick your poison because he will find anybody that is open. He is shown to be one of the best passers in the league already at 21 years old, which is just terrifying. And when you have guys like Trey Burke and Seth Curry and even like who else do they have that shot the other night? Even if Tim Hardaway gets going, Porzingis obviously is a threat. Like they have a lot of spacing opportunities for him, which only helps Luka because you can't totally leave those guys, which is going to give him more room to operate. You got to give him credit as well, Luka, for turning it around. He had obviously a very high scoring game one, but it was a little sloppy with the turnovers, and he comes back with 28, 8, and 7. Got the free throw line a bunch and only had one turnover. So kudos to him for really turning it around. And not to mention Dallas also unleashed their secret weapon, which is Boban. Good old Bobby. Or as Shaq said
I can't even do the hard thing that he did with his arms after the game. I tried to do it. I could not figure it out.
Well, he's also got the new nickname from Shaq, the "You Rang,"
yeah.
which is just great. But no, they played really well. I think I could see a world where it's like tonight when they play in a little bit, I could see Dallas going up 2-1 tonight very easily, and we could have argued they could have already been up 2-0 if not for the game one issues. But I could see a world where they get ahead and they just don't quite have that experience, like you said, to finish it. Although you have a coach in Rick Carlisle who has obviously won a championship with Dallas before, so he does have the ability, I think, to steady them better than other coaches would in that situation, and is also a big reason why you're seeing such good development from Trey Burke, Seth Curry. You're talking to Guy McCarl, who's been one of the best coaches in the league for probably 15 years now. Played, and then even as a player, played on the '86 Celtics and all those guys. So he has been around great basketball.
A little embarrassing moment in the last dance.
Yeah,
player, but
Yeah, he's been around. So they have a good head on their shoulders, and they seem to be clicking right now. Kawhi had a good game as well. But as we talked about offline, we had our first bad Paul George game, and we doubled down. It was like the when you roll the snake eyes and you get the dice back. Not only do we have the first bad Paul George game, but we got the first. He's icing something after the game to show that he was a little hurt in his shoulders, which I think I get it. You know how it is. Everyone's playing hurt this time of year. Everyone's banged up. Paul George also had shoulder surgery on both of these shoulders in the offseason. So they should have done their job. They should be okay. It's not like he had to play a full season. But it seems like we do this every year with him. And it's got to be frustrating as a Clippers fan to see, this guy that, everyone was so excited to pair with Kawhi, and he comes out 4 for 17, 2 for 10 from, 3-point range, and just doesn't have much of an impact. So he's obviously going to be a huge key for them. And just trying to handle Porzingis, I think that's such a mismatch because
they can't.
They have nobody.
Montrez has energy, but he cannot contain Kristaps. It's not even a matchup, honestly. Montrez will hit a couple layups and flex and act like he's all cocky and stuff, but he has no chance guarding Kristaps on the other end of the court. Like, he can't do anything about it.
Zubac's too slow.
No, it's just as bad. It's just as bad. So I just can't imagine that Rick Carlisle being the coach that he is and Luka being as knowledgeable a player he is, like you said, at 21 years old. I can't imagine that they're not continue to just pound inside, and then let Kristaps stretch out when he's ready to stretch out and hit those 3 balls as well. It's a real matchup problem, and that was something that I was not quite expecting to be as extreme as it has been here in this series. But like you said,
it's a huge advantage.
Yeah, we saw them go up pretty big, pretty confidently in game 1, and the Kristaps thing really screwed up their flow. And in game 2, they were contained, they were level headed. For a team that has not been to the play, a lot of these guys have not been to the playoffs. Most of these guys have not been to the playoffs. For them to be as level headed as they are right now, I'm extremely impressed, and I think it does. I think it does come down to Rick Carlisle being the coach that he is, and I think that they could actually pull off another game tonight. Whether they get ahead of themselves, I guess we'll have to wait and see how tonight goes. That's why I'm not ready to call the series yet.
When do you see? Because I think we're going to be heading towards that if Dallas, because Dallas has raced out in both of these games and really taken control. Do you see if if it's Lucas and KP are having a good game and the Mavericks are up like 10 midway through the third and Paul George is struggling, like, do we see the Kawhi? Like, Kawhi is so even keel, right? He just kind of goes through the game. He's on cruise control is such a poor phrase because that implies that he's not trying hard. Yeah. When he, in fact, he is. He's dominating. He's just so good at doing it throughout the game consistently. But like, when do we see him kind of divert and be like, okay, I've done everything to get everybody else involved. It's not really working. And when do we see like a little bit of like last year's Kawhi, and especially in those early rounds of the playoffs where he was just having these monster 35, 40-point nights? Like, do we? And he had 35 the other night, but like it was kind of in rhythm of the game. Like, do we see him take over at a certain point where he's just like, give me the ball and I'll figure it out? Or do you think it's still a little too soon for that?
I would think that if it's a loss tonight, then you're going to see that happen because Dallas, like we've talked about, is not a great defensive team. They don't really have anybody that can contain Kawhi when he is in that mindset. So I imagine that, like you said, if they are down 10 in the late third, early fourth quarter, I could even see it click as early as that. Mm-hmm. But I think if today is a loss, then it'll definitely happen in the next game where he's just going to be like, especially like you said, if Paul George has continued to struggle, Kawhi is going to be like, all right, I guess I need to step up here. He's gonna snap out of his, not lazy.
He'll show some emotion.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm looking forward to that because I think that this is now turning out to be one of the more thrilling series in the first round that we kind of expected, but not to be quite as competitive as it has been this early on. I think we all expected Dallas to give up the first couple just because they are young and they've shown up, and I'm excited to see it. Being a massive Luka fan, but let's get into some of the other games now, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about the Denver game because they got thrashed. They got completely thrashed by Utah. Utah looked like the best team in the bubble today. Mike Conley, you called it. I'll give you the credit there. You called it. Mike Conley hitting what was it? 7 of 8 from 3-point line, if I'm not mistaken.
Conley was, where's he at? He finished 7 of 8 from 3, 9 of 13 from the field for 27 points, and just only 25 minutes. Like, it wasn't like he played the whole game because they were up.
He called it the new father game.
New father game. Always had. Mike Trout did it, and basically it crosses over to every sport. And Conley did it. But if you want to talk more about how good they were, go ahead.
They were literally killing Denver on everything, whether it was the pick and roll and Gobert just finding easy looks next to the basket, and the three ball as well. We mentioned Conley, obviously. Donovan Mitchell's going to be hitting those. Joe Ingles didn't even have to do that much because the other guys are hitting the shot, especially between Conley and Mitchell. Like, those two just were so spectacular. It's just insane how bad Denver got beaten. And this I think today's loss was the most concerning loss for Denver. And I just have this thing in my head. I don't know why, but the Will Barton news came out before game 2, and they lost pretty bad in game 2 as well. Mm-hmm. I have this feeling in my head similar to the way that a lot of, I think, Denver fans have been feeling that after Will Barton went out, it was just kind of demoralizing for a lot of Denver people in general. And I think the players are kind of feeling that. That's, for some reason, that sort of seems to be what's sticking for me, is because, like, this is not the Denver team that we saw in the regular season, even when Will Barton and Gary Harris were not playing. And even in the seeding games, they were pretty solid. And I mean, Jokic was good. And the seeding games, he's not been really all that good. He's putting up, again, like, he continues to put up the numbers that he's usually going to put up, but like, he's not focused the way that he needs to be. And they're just getting picked apart on defense, and it comes down to those two guys being out. But they have guys that can fill in the spots like a Paul Millsap and a Jeremy Grant. Jeremy Grant's been okay, but the rest of the team has just been completely out of focus. And today it showed up on the offensive and the defensive end. Last game it was mostly on the defensive end. Today it was on both ends of the floor. They were that team should not be putting up as low points as they did today. For that team to not score 100 points is kind of ridiculous. Not even score 90 points, I don't think. I don't have the score.
No, 87.
Yeah. So that, I mean, it's bad. Denver is in serious trouble right now.
Yeah, for sure. They're down 2-1 in the series now, and really could have been 3-0 if not for Murray's heroics to really save us from the Donovan Mitchell game. So definitely a bad loss. I mean, don't get me wrong, like, blowouts happen. They happen to the best teams at times, but you can't. I feel like with the Utah that's already playing, they just got Conley back, but no Bogdanovich. Like, didn't seem to be kind of clicking on all cylinders. I was really surprised to see them come out and just dominate from start to finish. I mean, this was never a game.
It was never a game. It was never a game. The opening basket was a good Gobert dunk, and from there just kind of went rolling.
Set the tone.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, this is kind of the test. Like, how do Murray and Jokic and those guys respond in Game 4? That's kind of like I said. The nice part about the bubble is that you don't have to worry about anything else. Like all they have to do is go back to the hotel and focus on what they have to fix. They don't have to worry about a flight. They don't have to worry about a hotel other than the one that they've been in. So they should be solely focused on watching film and fixing their mistakes. I'm not going to say I'm confident either way, because I feel like this series is like so weird. That Jokic can come out and drop 35, 20, and 12 on so it would be Sunday.
Yeah.
Or he could kind of come out with another stinker. Like we'll see. Like, can he raise his game? Same thing with Murray. Like Murray, he had a great first game, but these last two, he's kind of been just a very average shooting guard, and that he falls into that sometimes, where he is really inconsistent and he just throws a couple of like 6 to 17 performances together, and it can't happen. If you want to be a good team, if you want to get out of the first round, I mean, they should. Denver should be a team that gets out of the first round, but as of right now, Utah seems to be the one clicking and really playing much better basketball.
They shot like 53% from the field or some ridiculous clip like that. They looked unstoppable out there. Like every time I looked at the screen, it was like shot goes in, shot goes in. I didn't see them. I didn't see them miss a single shot, and I'm not even exaggerating there. Every single time I looked at the screen, they made their shot. So maybe I'm bad luck to the Nuggets. I don't know, but as bad as it was for Denver, like here's how bad it was for Denver. Like Mike Malone is one of the most calm, cool, and collected coaches on the sidelines. He's not
very frustrated.
He was exacerbated. He looked like so out of it. He was he had his hands on his face. He was sitting there like, praying at one point. Like I don't know what he.
So nothing's going right for sure.
Yeah.
Well, you want to know how bad it was? It was bad enough that a meme went around at one point that it said the Nuggets in Game 1, and they were like the Chick-fil-A Nuggets. And then Game 2, they were like the crappy Burger King Nuggets or something like that. So they took some L's on the court and on social media. I'm trying to think, did we miss any other games from the other night? I mean, Toronto kept going today as well.
I was surprised to hear the stat. This is the first time that Toronto has opened a series 3-0. I had never heard that.
Well, they usually that's what happens when you don't have a guy like DeMar DeRozan. You have a good foundation of Siakam and those guys. It's like we talked about going in. They're clicking. I mean, they came into the bubble and they played very well in the seeding games, and they just carried it over. And Brooklyn is obviously, this could be a Brooklyn team next year with Kyrie and KD and all these dudes. But having Joe Harris even leave the bubble too is another shooter for them. So they're definitely
not there either.
Yeah, so they're definitely shorthanded. But Toronto, kudos to them for staying focused. It could have been a letdown game. They could have been like, let's take our foot off the gas, and they didn't. They played really, really well the entire game. Another pretty much start to finish win for them. Then they look in prime position to sweep. And there's really nothing to talk about. It's like we'll see them in round 2 because they're playing that well, and they're definitely I would put them as co-favorites with the Bucks to come out of the East right now. I think they've earned that much.
Milwaukee bouncing back, also getting the Game 2 win against Orlando. They looked good. I was listening to the broadcast on that one, and Doris Burke made a really, really good point. Actually, this was something that we discussed a little bit last time, and what Vooch did in Game 1 kind of carried over to Game 2, and full credit to DB for making this point, because it was a really good sort of analysis that I didn't really think of, and it's a pretty simple thing, but like Vooch was taking all the shots that they were giving him, and he was making them because they're makeable shots for him. What they did different in Game 2 is they just took everything else away from everybody else. They let Vooch continue to sort of make his shots and play his game, but they just took everybody else out of that rhythm, including DJ Augustine, who was good in Game 1. And the Magic were not bad in Game 2, but Milwaukee just looked like Milwaukee. If
they came out very I didn't watch the full game, but I caught pretty much most of the first half, and they came out right away. They seemed like they were Game 1. They just seemed like they were going through the motions really on offense. And Game 2, they ran nothing changed play-wise, but they just ran everything harder, set better screens, and got more open looks. Brooke Lopez started hitting shots early. Giannis seemed just determined to get to the rim from like the very beginning. He was just like, screw everybody else, get out of the way. The only question mark really is Chris Middleton, who apparently I jinxed by saying he's one of the 3 guys that raises his game and shooting. I've jinxed him, so I'm sorry. But other than that, they played pretty well, as you would expect, for the 1 seed. So I expect them to regain control. I think the only other game going now is Boston has a 5-point lead.
Yeah, and then Jimmy, we talked about this a little bit last time. We talked about it on offline as well. Jimmy has figured out TJ Warren and the Pacers. That seems to be sort of a locked up series for Miami. We've talked about that enough. Houston's 2-0 right now. James Harden continues to look good.
Yeah, OKC, that was a bad loss. They had, when you have a Harden game where he's like, 5-16 or 6-17, whatever he was yesterday, and didn't really, Houston as a team didn't shoot that well from 3, but it was a classic like stinker Harden game that you get usually 1 per series, and they didn't take advantage of it. They just couldn't get enough stops from other guys. Austin Rivers and even Jeff Green had a pretty good game.
Jeff Green's been good. Jeff Green's been really good in the series. CP3 has not been quite as good as I think we were expecting him to be. He's been a little. This looks like sort of the CP3 that we.
I was gonna say, is this the usual playoff CP3 where he's still good, but not like he does falter in some of the bigger moments? It just stinks because I thought they were gonna even it up, especially when I saw how bad Houston missed like 15 threes in a row at one point. Mm-hmm. Anytime they get to that level, you start thinking of like 2017, 2018. Where they started missing all those threes against Golden State. And I just thought, okay, OKC capitalize, make this a 1-1 series, and they'd probably just trade wins back and forth. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if, they're not going to get Russ back for game 3, maybe game 4 or 5. We'll see.
At this point, be patient with him coming back, because if you're winning games, you don't need to rush him back. And they're winning games pretty handedly, too. They're not like close games. So I think they feel comfortable letting him recover as much as he needs on top of, him actually being injured.
I hate to say it, and maybe I'm screwing the mojo of the bubble, but I could see Houston taking the next 2 and this being done, and it would feel weird because I thought OKC was going to really take advantage, but they just haven't shown it in these first couple games. They don't quite have all the shot making that they need to. And even Adams, like you said, he's playing like 25 to 30 minutes, but he just, they're picking him apart on everything else, and it's hard to play him in big situations. Even if it is close, they're really, running out of options there. So they're probably, they did better than we thought they would this year. Let's be honest. Pretty much everybody wrote them off. So kudos to them for that. But I think that series is pretty much over. The Boston Sixers game, which is going on, that's interesting because it's now a 1-point game. And Embiid had a fantastic first half. I think he had like 21. But as all Sixers fans know, and as I was waiting for, I just looked at the shot chart. He's 0-5 in the second half, and he's only got like 3 or 4 points all from foul shots. Sure. So it's just like, and again, they're shorthanded, so without Simmons, it's hard to judge them. But at the same time, it's like you see him play so well in stretches. And Shaq used to do this too. He'd score 20, 25 in the first half. But even he wouldn't take his foot off the gas that much in the second half. Like, he'd still get his when he needed to. And Embiid just seems to just run out of steam. I don't know if it's mentally he runs out of steam, if it's physically, if it's both.
I think it's mentally. Embiid is a very when he's in the right mindset, he's firing on all cylinders, and when he's not completely locked in, he's bad. He's
how do you? I don't understand how you get him. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's a total crapshoot of when he is and when he isn't.
Yeah, you don't know.
And mind you, I'm far from, I'm the opposite of a Philadelphia fan in pretty much any sport. But it is frustrating, to see. Because at the end of the day, I would rather see good basketball, no matter who it's coming from, and to see him just kind of not give the energy. I can only imagine that. I have Sixers, plenty of friends that are Sixers fans, and I know equally as frustrated seeing him just, not show up sometimes, and it's really, really frustrating. And we're going to talk about it probably until the Sixers are done here in the playoffs. But it's like, what are they going to do in the offseason? Because Horford and Harris are combining to make, however much money this year and not performing. Simmons is hurt. Embiid is lackluster. And, Brett Brown's gone. That's pretty much a given. But it's just, I don't know. It just seems like, they give you glimpses. Like, they're hanging with Boston right now. And partially because Tatum's having a really weird and ugly game. But, they're hanging with them when they probably shouldn't be. But I know down the stretch, like, Embiid's, did he miss another? Yep, he's 0 for 6 now in the second half. So, and if you look at the shot chart too, that's the frustrating thing. Is he's got 2 around the 6-foot range, and then he took a 3, and that was in the third quarter, and then he's taken at least another jumper in the fourth. And it's like he in the first half he was all around the rim, taking advantage of Cantor and Tice just like he should. But in the second half, he starts to get tired and he starts settling for these jumpers, and that's when Philly's at their worst because he's not a good shooter, he's not a consistent shooter, and that kills him because then nobody else can make shots, but nobody else can go inside. Horford's not going to go inside anymore. Harris can't. Like, nobody else is going to do it. So they lose. They become very predictable and very easy to defend at that point. So
yeah, and when you're going up against a Boston team that's as good on defense as they are, and Brad Stevens,
it's not going to work.
Who's gonna acknowledge that and take complete advantage of that? You're done. You're done.
Right.
So it does suck to see Philly go down this way. But maybe they'll put up a little bit of fight and take this game and make it a bit more of a series. I guess we'll know once we get off this broadcast. Let's close things out with a little prediction for tonight. Does Dallas take Game 3, or do they drop it and Clippers take the 2-1 lead?
Every fiber of my being tells me to take Dallas.
Me too.
But
Oh,
Not so fast, my friend. I do not bet against Kawhi Leonard. I think he will at some point in the third quarter, when things are iffy, or early fourth, he'll start to. I think Paul George is hopefully going to play a little bit better. He doesn't have to be a superstar, but he's got to play better in the game too.
Big question. Big question.
But that'll be huge. But I think at some point Kawhi will sense if the game starts to slip or Luka gets hot or whatever, and he'll start to take over from everything. I think he's so good now that he can not only take over shooting and getting to the line, but obviously his playmaking as well, which is such an added bonus that he didn't really have in the last couple of years. So I think you're going to see. I stick with Kawhi. I don't want the Lakers to play the Clippers, but I want to see Kawhi do well. I think he's such a great. I think he's the best overall player in this league. And so I think I'm gonna. Every fiber says says Dallas, but I'm gonna go with the Clippers in a tight one. I think we should hopefully see a really tight one tonight. I want to see like down to the wire because I want to see Luka and Kawhi just trade crunch time possessions and see if they have this veteran who's this top 30 player of all time versus this future potential top player. How do they go at each other? So we'll see how that goes. But I'll take the Clippers by a smidge.
All right, I'm going to take Dallas here, and kind of, the opposite of what you said. I trust Luka the way that he's playing right now. He's just, not just in this series.
Skip.
All season. He's, he started the season 20 years old. He turned 21 in February. For him to play with as much swagger and confidence as he does, it's ridiculous. It's honestly ridiculous. And for him to, come off a win, I feel like he's going to come into this game with some confidence. And I expect the Kawhi game to happen in game 4, but I think Luka's going to knock Kawhi down just one more peg before we do get to see that game. But yeah, that'll bring us to a close for this episode. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back here on Monday, so we'll have a full weekend of stuff to recap.
A lot of stuff to talk about.
Yeah. We'll have more. We'll have 2 more Dallas Clippers games. We'll have another Lakers and Portland game. We'll see if Denver can bounce back. We'll see if Philly's done by the end of the weekend. We'll have a lot to talk about. So come back and join us Monday. Our social medias are right down there. Be sure to follow Nuts and Bolts Sports everywhere on our website as well as on all social media platforms. And like I said, we'll be back Monday, so come back and chat a lot of basketball.